And four, three, two, one, boom, there we are. Hi guys, Michael Califf, author of A Very Broken System and junior senior budding software developer, web dev in the making. And as much as this mightn't be the best up and coming career move, I could not live with myself if I did otherwise. So here we are. Today the next podcast I did was going to be basically to demonstrate the expense of a Truman Show. So basically just to demonstrate the wasted resources that went on basically protect not basically on wasted on protecting corruption in Victoria and the bullying and the harassment, which a lot of you who have heard me speak or read my book or whatnot will be aware of the type of ugliness that I'm talking about. And it is the type that has led to what I'm about to do today. As I was going to do that, but I'm going to a little bit of a sidetrack, and that is in the news of the 300,000 unsolved crimes in Victoria, the struggling police force, which just makes what happened to me even off the charts worse. The fact that one was wasted in going after me in the most disgusting, the most sickening of sickening ways. It's just inexcusable. So with no further ado, let's dive on in. So again, what led to me doing this instead of carrying on with what I had planned is this, well, last couple of days worth of horror stories, to be honest, but the biggest example, the easiest, is this ridiculous. This is 300,000 as police struggle to fill roster staff. 300,000 unsolved incidents, which thousands of Victorians, which you'll be able to read for yourself, thousands of Victorian victims of crime are being denied justice, with the number of unsolved crimes soaring to a record high of nearly 300,000 in just 12 months. And you've got to remember that that's clearly compounding. You also have to remember how doctored it is. So what happens is, for example, just as the nth example is when, for example, a youth comes to the sentencing stage, often a lot of these charges are wiped. So the true extent of the crime statistics we see are heavily reduced, heavily. That doesn't include things like, just as one example, so every time a drug is sold, just take one drug, take cocaine. Every time one uni student or young advertising guru goes and scores off their drug deal, they connect, thinking hey, they're going to be the life of the party, still committed a crime, right? It is crazy. The world we have created for ourselves is nonsensical. I'll continue though. So we've got in Victoria this mess of a state, 300,000, the 296,000 unsolved cases is a massive 81,633 increase. Oh, here I was mistaken. I thought it was up from 81,000 last year. Oh my gosh, it's significantly worse. So it's not up as much as I originally thought, but it means there was 210,000 unsolved crimes last year. So that's the story that led right about the same time. What I was going to do was run through just one newspaper for those who aren't aware of the mess that is in Victoria at the moment. This one newspaper, and there's no you could say what you want about the mainstream media, and I have my own beliefs and opinion about some of the members of the mainstream media, but in this case, it's not an opinion or what. This is just this crime happened. This happened. So we're not looking at what the opinion of the left leaning, the right leaning. We're not looking at that. So anyway. So we have page 1. Now you got to remember to the Victorians, to the non-Victorians, only 8 short years ago, we had the Burke Street Mall incident, nearly linked very closely to a corrupt police officer, very closely, and rumoured to be caused by the weaponised misuse of AI bot technology doing a person's head in until they barreled down the Burke Street Mall. It's pretty close to a fact nowadays. So anyway, the reason I mentioned the Burke Street Mall incident is because to have a stolen car barrel down the Burke Street Mall within 8 years of that is getting close to akin to a bomb going off in New York City within 8 years of 9/11. Like, it was a big thing, a catastrophe. Innocent people lost their lives. Like, it was bad. And now, not 8 years on, due to the same mismanagement that caused the Burke Street Mall incident, we've got the same ravel, the worse, in a situation where we've got out of control wayward youth barreling down a Burke Street Mall. Luckily, nobody died in this occasion. Luckily. And luckily, it's safe to say they weren't having their head done in by a dodgy police officer with a newfound gadget. We're safe on that one, at least. So we've got, in this story, we have carjackings are surging in Victoria, with the frightening crime running at a rate of 9 a week. 9 carjackings a week. Let's put that in perspective. Only a handful of short years ago, people that were guilty of committing carjackings, and I'm not talking about youth, but it's still similar. Like, youth would be looking at, say, a third of a sentence. When we're talking violence, like premeditated violence and really messing with just standard everyday citizens, although there was a lot of lenience always for youth, there was still proportion, it was still a heavy sentence. A carjacking is my point. So here we have 9 a week in Jacinta Allen's Victoria. And don't forget Daniel Andrews. Don't forget those, when you're listening to me read this, the images of Daniel Andrews set to personally profit massively, standing after setting up Victoria, spending resource after resource on setting himself up nicely, while the rest of the state is just filled with rot, corruption, crumbling roads, and sadly youth women dying at increasing level. Like, just yuck. Okay, what happened in the last decade is yuck, and it's not to do with COVID. So we have a carjacking within 9 a week. Not long ago, one carjacking committed by like a 21-year-old, 22, 25-year-old drug-addicted youth running around would see that person probably between, depending on the scale and depending on their situation, mental health and what have you, between 18 months to 6 years, just to put it in perspective. So now we've got 9 of that level of crime every single week. Every week. Now, here's the very sickening one, because when you know my experience and what I went through with drug-addicted women being coerced with the returned custody of their toddler, you think, A, the people that approved those decisions even thought to do that, B, the people that turned a blind eye to that happening, and then see the people in child protection who didn't go, hang on, no chance. No, has she done X, Y, and Z? Well, then no, sorry, I'm not signing off on it. Like just a complete breakdown. But then hang on, it gets a little bit worse. When I started seeing, and I've said this to some of you who will have already heard me, when I started seeing exactly, hang on, this is really dodgy, and I started getting steered like sarcastically, like that workers would steer me when I was saying, hang on, I don't accept being sexually abused, no matter whether I'm a middle-aged white male or not. I do not. I had systemic abuse when I was a minor, and now I've had systemic abuse in the ugliest way as an adult. I don't take to that. So then, in their little charade, sarcastically, they then steered me to Slater and Gordon, obviously where I hit a dead end. Like once you're here, oh come on, those, you know, hello, the Daniel Andrews bike boy story, like it's sickening. Like they were rubbing the corruption in your face that badly. But here we have child protection services. So child protection has repeatedly ignored pleas for help from children trapped in violent homes and abusive relationships, a scathing new report has found. The report, released exclusively to the Herald Sun, was commissioned by Safe Steps Victoria 24/7 Domestic Violence Crisis Service. It found teenagers were left in dangerous situations because no one responded from child protection. Hello, seriously, Victoria, this is a lot of the children getting let down, Victoria. Youth migrants murdered, youth Indigenous murdered, children getting used by the same system as currency. Literally. Are you kidding? You can't be angry enough at that. Now, you beauty. Can't challenge this. I dared question anything like this when I was under the watchful eye of them, and that just got used as fodder against me, as if I was like this big bad bigot, literally, and gave them excuse to break law after law. This is Victorian state government members. In their minds, it gave them excuse after excuse to break laws, including sex offence laws, including surveillance laws, to go after me in the most yuck way, to spread my case around, to try and ruin my reputation by telling everybody of my petty criminality when I was homeless, just yuck. And to add to it, the likes of Magistrate Pappas even gloated about that, as if, like, yeah, when you came to her exact words, take it how you want. Her exact words with my last meeting with her were, when you came to us, you had a reputation. Like, as if to say, well, how I saw it, and I think nobody else could see it any other way. Once you put the whole thing, you're like, we made sure to ruin that, didn't we? Like, yuck. You also ruined the life of at least one toddler, at least one, but clearly it looks like many. Just abhorrent. So anyway, in all that, with the most mismanaged dinosaur, petty-minded culture on the planet being Corrections Victoria, and if you've ever had experience with the Brendan Munnings, the Seleskis, the Jan Shuards, and now we've got some other person in there, I don't know who, but if you've ever had experience with the top officers of Corrections Victoria and sentence management, they have a level of petty-minded bitterness that has to be experienced. And it is just more about job protection than it is about proper management, and certainly than it is about recidivist rates. You know how many times you hear, that's not our job, that's housing. We call people like you superannuation. Like, yuck. Just yuck. Just a poor culture exists. It's just the way it is. There's no getting around it. That you have rotten apples at the top, and it just seeps on down to other people who just like, look, I'm just doing my job. I just hope their attitude doesn't get me stabbed. I'm just doing my job, thanks. you have that great, hardworking frontline officers who don't get listened to, but you also have this yuck, this petty-minded yuck. You have like, oh, just yuck. And now that's intermingled with extreme, like, for example, women with extreme left wing views who are that yuck inside. They have to be kept away from the male living quarters. Honestly, like, just yuck people. So anyway, in that, somehow we've got sex crime felons kept with female prisoners. You just can't be angry enough at this incompetence. Like, these are people's lives. People are dying because of this. Police officers are killing themselves at record levels. Like, just disgusting. At least 7 transgender prisoners, some with a history of sexual violence, have been housed at Victorian women's prisons. Like, seriously, let me explain this. I'll tell you from my perspective what I know of this. So I know when the system got their foot into, like, about the same time they started running with SVOs, they call them, serious violent offenders, and also FPOs, firearm prohibition orders. Now, on paper, they sound great. And 100%, we need to eradicate organised crime, especially out of our government projects. 100%. And you can't have violence in the community. 100%. But they pass all these laws. And in that is the FPO, Firearm Prohibitions Order. Look at us. We've never had more guns on our street. So while they're passing FPOs to be able to invade people's privacy, I'm going to go off here. This is going to end up being a big one, but you can't help it. So while they have FPOs, things like privacy invasion, firearm prohibition orders and whatnot, at the same time they're doing that, they've got high-ranking members of police literally letting highest drug importers and drug dealers out scot-free through through conning them into pretending that they're handing in a gun arsenal, a gun sesh. So you just can't be like, are you kidding? So they're meant to be protecting people on one end, but here they're flooding the streets with drugs on the other, while knowing that guns are coming in at record. Like, it is so broken. It is not funny. And we have the story of the convicted pedophile began, look, I'm not really, biological males convicted of sexually assaulting women and girls have been living with female inmates at the Dame Phyllis. So back to the FPO part. When they started the FPOs and the SVOs, what they did, and this is the petty corrections, they know exactly how, like, the culture is, and like, prisons historically, prisoners normal, just don't like sex offenders one bit. So almost like as a little sarcasm, what they did was they had their foot in the door for being able to basically house the worst of the worst inmates indefinitely. So if an inmate there was a couple of examples where they'd done some violent acts behind prison wall, and to be honest, the people that they did it to, really, they must have just had a beef with the governors, because there was a lot worse examples than the people that they did it to be honest. But anyway, the point is, what they did with these SVO offenders, they housed them in a place. You have to say they did it on purpose, because they could have just as easily been, at the time, put in, for example, Loddon or Durrangol or another place. But instead they chose to house them right alongside the sex offenders. Like, there's the Ararat, the pedophiles and whatnot, and then they put the worst of the prison system right alongside. Like, it was, my point is, anyway, why could you not house these special cases out there? They could have been done so differently. which is just typical, and which is why you have like that whole North Korea thing coming out of Corrections Victoria, which doesn't allow the lower ranked officers to speak because you wouldn't want the truth getting out. That's the reality. That's why they went to so great a level to go after me when I was involved in an IBAC investigation against a prison officer. They don't want the truth getting out. Yet all they did was just show me and other people they were using weaponized AI, literally like you're mentally torturing inmates. It's how mismanaged and broken the Victorian prison system is, like bad. And it shows, right? Everything in the law and order system shows. So then, next story, oh my gosh, hunt for police killer scaled back. Now, don't worry about the Dezi Freeman. The police clearly don't deserve to die. That's just a given. But what that means is we've got a crazed gunman on the loose, a double cop killing crazed gunman on the loose. That's what that means. You can, we've scaled it back. We've scaled the most expensive search ever and all this back and what have you. But the reality is, Victoria right now has a gun-toting, crazed double cop killer on the loose. Good work, Victorian system. And he was a victim of police harassment. Whatever you want to say about that, I agree. It does not, crazy, should never have done that. But he was clearly getting targeted and harassed, clearly. Whether he was fighting back, I don't know. But from all the images, he had noisy neighbors put alongside him. I've seen all their tricks. I can see straight through what they would have been doing to the guy. Doesn't mean it was right what happened, though. Don't misread that for a second. Does mean there's a rotten culture in Victoria, though. More terror. Teens had all been freed. Oh my gosh. Yet another stolen vehicle. So that's massive news in Victoria. Massive news. 8 years ago, we had a person drive down the Burke Street Mall, killing innocent people, including a baby. It was huge. Just terrible. The fact that this even got anywhere near the city like this is disturbing in itself. And we've got a story of a carjacking. Carjacking victim Stephanie was loading her children into the family vehicle as a group of opportunistic offenders. This crime would have seen the people who got convicted of this serving 2 years minimum. 2 years minimum, no matter their age. And once rare, carjackings rise to 9 every single week. So I've covered that. And Mad Monday for the cats. Yuck. Here we go. Boom. Sorry, cats, guys. I personally don't care about your clickbait trying to be confrontational. I think we got a lot bigger things to worry about, and I think the Geelong story is about as good a time as any to go, you know what? Who cares? You're not a victim. You're a great person. There's no personal abuse, personal slur. So what? You're not a victim because you're gay. You're not a victim because you're this. You're not a victim because you're no problem. You're awesome. That's it. Why would you even stop and worry about anybody else? Because you're awesome. Don't worry about it. Why don't they teach that at school? Instead, they teach, oh yeah, like goes to that person say that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And look at us, and the evidence is in, the data is in. We've never been worse as a nation, as a state, as a society. Never been worse. Everything bad is up and everything good is down. Hello? Now, this one grinds my gears. You can see I'm getting a little bit heated. I am, because it's disgusting, because I know the amount of resources that were misappropriated going after just me, let alone the other people. I just know the dodginess that exists in the system, and it is disgusting. Alarming new data from the independent broad-based Anti-Corruption Commission's Perceptions of Corruption survey shows 81% of MPs and 68% of councillors believe corruption is an issue in Victoria. There's two things to take. One, I think only 27 of however many politicians bothered to even go in that survey. But B, that should be zero. That should be like, no, chat. What do you mean? We've got the most expensive bureaucracy in the world. No way. It's checked, double check, check. Like, this thing is tight. Shouldn't be up 81% believe corruption could exist. Serious? I'll tell you for a fact it does. I'll show you the emails if you like. Unbelievable. The figures show concerns over corruption among MPs have grown since Daniel Andrews was in power in 2023, when 68% of MPs believed corruption to be an issue. The online survey, which was sent to all Victorian members and councillors in March and April, was answered by 219 officials, including 27 members of parliament and 192 councillors. More than 90% of MPs believe there is a medium to high risk of corruption via inaction, collusion, and misuse of resources. It's sickening, and it's just because the evidence is it's there in front of you, from the CFMEU big builds, you name it, to the bike boy scandal. It's just, you can see, to the amount of money that gets spent for what gets returned, for things like $13 million for 40 machete bins, and the contract goes to G4S. Hello. The most dubious of dubious prison operators who, when they went to investigate G4S run Port Phillip, a mysterious fire in the books section where no inmate could come near. That's a story for another day. So we've got the corruption story alongside the crime through the roof story, alongside the lefty loony story, alongside the mismanagement in the prison. So no wonder there's a recidivist rate through the roof problem. Then we've got a story after arrest after a pawn shop robbery. That's the effects of drugs on a person who needs money to get the drugs. Something that, reversing prohibition, that story would not exist. And yuck. Children have nowhere to go for help. This is back to the childcare, the child protection services, and just the fact they have no money, I could just picture, at the end of the day, they allowed for the returned custody of a toddler to be used as payment even. Imagine that. Think about that in Victoria, Australia, Melbourne, Australia, Wokeville, Australia, where they're going, hey, yeah, we can see you nearly driven to suicide, but I'll tell you what, if you do this, we'll return the hostage. We'll give you your toddler back if you do that. And that is drive hidden cameras and hidden surveillance on a person who dared question their integrity. Yet they don't want to do anything about it. They just want to watch this rot grow every day. Oh, here we go. I knew there was more. Smokers dodge tax excise, dodge tax as excise take drops. Illegal market hits revenue. Wait till you hear this. And this is just, when you hear me talk about prohibition and how ridiculous it is and how the only winner is the drug dealers and blah, blah, blah. this is just the perfect example of how we have to progress out of it. But anyway, for now, we'll just stick to how ridiculous, how wrong our leaders get it and have got for at least the last 20, 30 years, at least. Australia's tobacco tax take has more than halved in just 5 years, with Treasurer Jim Show. Final figures for the 2024-25 show the federal government made 7.8 billion on the tobacco excise. 3.75 billion worse than what had originally been forecast. So they had forecast and they're 4 billion out. Oh, come on. The total revenue was less than half from the tobacco excise. That's, you know why that is? That's because their experts are job protecting, not experts over experts. That's why, you know, when you all hear, oh, look, I think we still need, the data shows that we need to still enforce the laws harder. And, oh, but, you know, if we keep the figures up, statistics show less people will take up smoking. You got it wrong again. Simple, very obvious too. The total revenue was, that's how they get it wrong. $4 billion wrong. Come on. Labor has invested more than 350 million. See, this is the madness. They've spent more than 350 million to bolster police. So they're going to drain the resources there, but then drugs will go up and just so crazy. Just stop prohibition. Stop it. Then what you sell there, you'll make plenty of excise here. You'll be able to control the market. No brainer. Organized crime will plummet to next to nothing. You know, so the bad guys will lose, and the good guys, the addicts, the ones who are trying to, you know, don't really want to be there, but they'll win. Why would you not want that? Madness. Mr. Chalmers said the government did not believe cutting the excise, which adds about 30, just nonsense. Mr. Chalmers said the government did not believe cutting the excise, which adds about $35 to the cost of a pack of 25 cigarettes, adds 35. You can buy those proper packaged, tailor-made, like proper packed up cigarettes for $13. And here their excise adds 35. You could buy nearly 3 packets for just what the... Oh, and then we have another O fiasco. So, and hang on, I believe there's an ex-politician somewhere near this, is there? Is there an ex-politician somewhere up the top of the food chain at the Optus? I think so. We have a video of a shooting. Small, tiny news. Remember this, what you're seeing here was what Victoria Police fell on requiring to do the Lawyer X for, because of exactly, see that small story there? See how wrong they got it? See how wrong Victoria got everything law and order in the last 20 odd, or 12, 15 odd years? Definitely since the 2007 OPI investigation that wasn't allowed to run its course. Definitely since then. See how wrong they got it? Completely wrong. They're talking porkies to the public. That story there, actually, where is that story? Okay, that story there, no, there, come on, there, that story there, right there, that story right there would have been front page news only a few short years ago, would have been front page news and would have warranted all manner of like rallying from the police, would have been carnage. And the biggest difference to the gangland war is back then there were like 30-odd, 36-year-old seasoned organized criminals, career criminals shooting each other. Now we've got 22-year-olds getting shot by 30-year-olds. No, they got it right. Come on, you cannot be angry enough. No, don't even stop. So one of Daniel Andrews' paid agitators, Thomas Sewell, has, don't even stop. And officer killed on duty will never be forgotten. Of course, what a horrible tragedy, and the fact that we still have the gunman, and that's what that day was. The day of that newspaper was Police Remembrance Day. Here we go. Look at this one. Tiniest little story. There it is. No, there. Tiniest little story. Here's Jacinta Allen. This is, you see, when you hear me talking about money not filtering through, if ever you've heard me mention how I don't agree with Welcome to Country, and I certainly don't agree with this, the voice thing, it's because of this. Because I've seen the true extent. Look, a little small page. The money could be well spent differently. Here's an Indigenous 18-year-old killed by this same government's mismanagement of the state. So while Daniel Andrews is standing over there beaming alongside Kim Jong-un and Putin, set to personally profit, you've got small stories now because, they only want a small story of an Indigenous 18-year-old killed. Seriously, Victorians, you can't be angry enough, honestly. 2 teens, including one out on bail, have been charged with murder over the death of Caden Morgan, a strong Indigenous family of Victoria. For those wokies who don't know they're Indigenous, the Morgan family is a very strong Indigenous family, and they'd be reeling because of it. Good one, Jacinta. Good one. Oh, and here we have the court case of a man admits no one should die like that. Of course not. So this lovely teacher was killed by just some loony. She just got to a lovely stage. This is in Victoria. Just another, whatever the case. No, the system may not have been directly responsible. May have been. Who knows? For all you know, the guy lost his house because of mismanagement from it. I don't know. I don't want to know. All I know is another horror story in Victoria. A drugged up truckie who blamed a pothole for causing a head-on collision. I bet you there was a pothole involved. I bet you. He may have been drugged out. He may have had a bong. Horrible story. I bet there was a pothole involved. Top builder goes bust. And I'd say that may do us. Like, seriously, if you don't feel a little bit like, just means you don't care about your fellow Victorians, Australia. Thanks for sticking through that with me, guys. Yuck. Just yuck. And when you add it to this story, when you add it to what happened in that story, a very broken system. Yuck. You see where when they have look at what they could have been spending resources on preventing that newspaper from happening. But instead, because of the rotten, disgusting culture that exists in Victoria, entire law and order system, the prisons, the police, judicial system. We've had high level magistrates, well and truly knew about AI bot technology getting misused, knew about drug addicted women being rewarded with the returned custody of their toddler, and thought nothing of it. Wanted to try and ruin the reputation of the person who was calling it out. Victorians, Australia, we got some big problems. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Stay tuned for more.